Hello YouTube and welcome to the Armor with me Blue today, and I want to discuss kind of the meta overall and how it's shaping to be, as well as talk about a couple of deck lists of either winning or topping decks in different CC events recently. And first of all, congratulations to Bob and his win on Prism. Actually, it's something that no one expected, or at least almost no one expected, because this deck has been kind of even outside of the radar of most people. But Bob did it on a mono Luminaris list. There's no Iris, he's running only 16 blues, he's running Celestial Reprimands and Angelic Rats, as well as like 6 Figments, a whole lot of Heralds. He's running Library, Light of Soul, a Tome package against the Guardians and Brutes, and yeah, overall pretty interesting deck list. The deck seems to be very greedy, very aggressive, very kind of high roll in that sense, but my main problem, and the thing I'm not too sure about with this deck, is our matchup into Guardians and Brutes, because we're kind of, it seems to me that the deck is kind of relying on your opponents ignoring Passing Mirage for a turn or two, and focusing on things like Genesis or Merciful Retribution maybe, which are cards that do not achieve way too much when you, especially Genesis, when you do not have Iris, because like what are you going to do with these Spectral Shields? You know, like they will not transfer into damage, and you will have to slowly kill them, obviously, but especially against Guardian, like Celestial Reprimand does not work on like almost all of your red attacks, even like some of your yellow with Starstruck on like in Bravo, and Victor is kind of trying to play even higher power on average. So I'm not really seeing it once people kind of get Prism in the radar and get a couple of like practice matches and so on. I still feel like the element of surprise is a big factor for a bunch of these unexpected decks winning, but it's definitely pretty cool to see, and there's definitely some things that we should take into consideration from this list, most definitely. And yeah, then continuing on with an Arcane Games event where a Teku reached top 4. And this is a deck, a hero that was like even lower than Prism in like almost every tier list I've seen. And it's pretty cool to see him actually succeeding. There's a bunch of interesting developments, in my opinion, in Teku from the last time I checked on this hero and like how the decks are built and so on. The most important one, I believe, is just we no longer seem to be playing the red evil bases, and they did feel kind of clunky, but at one point, to me at least, it felt like unnecessary evil, because like how else am I going to get the bonuses from my evil steel equipment? And the bonuses from the evil steel equipment looked pretty juicy, but I guess the dude playing this deck kind of figured out that you don't need to be getting those bonuses, you know, you don't need to be doing fancy stuff constantly, and pretty much what he's doing is he just blocks with the evils, casts them whenever he can. He then scraps just enough with his junkyard dogs and scrapped traders, and just plays tanks. So kind of the focus is not so much on, okay, let me as consistently and as fast as possible reach my Evo equipment. It's just, okay, let's just play a kind of a normal tempo game where I try to equip my Evos with like as low investment as possible, because we're seeing zero of the zero cost scrap cards, which, you know, like they felt good in terms of allowing you to get your Evo equipment in your banish zone, but they felt kind of awful to play. And this deck is kind of trying to turn one or two, whenever you can sacrifice a little bit of life, just play some of these, then block with the rest, scrap trader one of them in a turn where you block with everything, you just scrap trader, pitch of blue, equip one of the evil steals, then arsenal or something, and then in the meantime just send good attacks like Liquid Cool Mayhem, which is just a 3/6, but it's still some damage that you can return to your opponent. Junkyard Dog, which is 3/7, CNCs, and then like the War Machines obviously become very good whenever you have like 2, 3, 4 evils. And then just end the game with a Singularity, which pops all of your effects at once and kind of gives you this insane finishing power, I guess. There's an interview, I believe, with the person who won with this deck on Alan Loop's channel, and there's going to be an interview with Bob as well later this week. And I definitely recommend you watch these if you're interested in those heroes. And next, we have Yuki Lee Bender's win with Kaio at Battle Hardened Hartford. And the Kaio list looks pretty amazing. One thing I wanted to talk about is kind of pack hunt. It's something that that was not on my radar when I was trying to build the deck, but in reality it's pretty amazing because you have a lot more access to go again in Brute as a whole with the new cards from heavy hitters, because a lot of them allow you to generate agility in sort of efficient ways, and you being able to go for swing big into pack hunt or something similar where your opponent is incentivized to block you out on those turns because you're presenting way too much damage. Pack hunt kind of says no to that, right? So if you go swing big pack hunt and your opponent's like, okay, block 6 here, I'm going to block 6 on the next attack, you say, well, you're going to only block 3 on the next attack, and you get a bunch of chip damage, and you kind of like leave them with like 1 card in hand, which doesn't really matter, right? Especially if they're on something like Kasai. You know, if they're on something like Guardian, it's going to definitely matter, but if they're on something else, then like 1 card into your weapon swing is not that amazing. So yeah, and Brute overall received probably the best, or like the best cards from heavy hitters, but that kind of makes sense because Brute needed a lot. Brute really felt like it needed a lot in order to be competitively viable. Levia has been a lot closer to competitively viable, especially after the Steel Dawn, where she didn't receive that many cards, but she still got some. But even at that point, her like Monarch cards were definitely better than the baseline Brute package. And yeah, like something that I wanted to talk about actually is how this heavy hitters meta has been incredibly diverse, and how it feels like all of the heroes are more or less in the same line of in terms of power level, and like the differences between power levels between the heroes seem incredibly insignificant. You know, like we'll look at top 8s and it will be like, it will not only be diverse in terms of the top 8, you know, like the top 8 we have like 5, 6 different heroes, but those heroes will be kind of like different between events. You know, we have like Dashes, Katsus, Fais, Azaleas, we have Uzuri toppings, we have Kasai, we have Dorinthia, we have Kayu, we have you know, obviously Prism and Tekuvesen. It's just incredibly diverse. And yeah, I was trying to kind of build a Kaiju deck to kind of go along with the rest of my deck decks, but I, to be honest, tried way too hard to make Berserk work, and turns out once again Berserk is not the way. You know, like I really wanted it to be the way, but Berserk is not the way, and the way seems to be to just play Cast Bones and have like insane turns with Cast Bone, and like even Runner is something that I thought would be a little bit inconsistent for it to kind of attack whenever you have whenever it has go again, which kind of means it needs to have agility. But between agile wind up, quash of agility together with like Kaiu's ability to make your like 6s, 7s in the deck, and Cast Bones and Assault and Battery, agility generation is not that bad. You know, if anything, it's like pretty decent. And at that point is just that you go again, that gives you agility for next turn again, and that's amazing. And the other hero that I wanted to make a deck for was Olympia, and I guess Betsy, but Olympia and Betsy have felt, to be honest, so terrible that it's kind of sad. We felt the same way about Tekuvesen and Prism whenever they came out. Prism at the very least received a new weapon. Tekuvesen hasn't really received anything new, but I guess people slowly kind of figured him out in a way where he is sort of okay. You know, like at Worlds and other events, we have seen Tekvus start out the tournament pretty well with like 4-0, 5-0 and so on. He hasn't quite topped, but at least, you know, like going 5-0 is still something. But yeah, I just had nothing for Betsy and Olympia. And finally, we moved to Kasai, that was second in Battle Hardened Manila. And that kind of makes me pretty happy because we're finally in a position where the meta is incredibly diverse, it is incredibly equal in terms of power level, and we see immediate change in the meta and representation from the new set. You know, because the past few sets did not have as big, in my opinion, of a presence in the metagame, or at least not that fast. Where here we have like Manu and Hartford were some of the first events, if not the first events, and we have like Kasai and Kaio in the finals of those events. And yeah, like the list is, in my opinion, is pretty standard. In my list, I was going for literally 0 blues. I kind of realized that that's way too low of a count, and you're forced into a lot of kind of not amazing turns, especially if your opponent is sort of good at stopping you generating gold. In my opinion, 17 is kind of high, but I believe 17 is because of like these 2 cards which maybe only come against Kano together with the Neuron package. So like between 12 and 15 blues I think is like the right amount. I have yet to test the deck with like 12 blues to see if it's good enough. But yeah, like definitely 20 yellows feels about right. Feels about right. I'm not sure how I feel about like 3 Bloodmonger hands, because you can almost never play all 3. And I don't know how I feel about Raised an Army, because I am yet to see someone resolve it or me myself play it. But I guess like Bloodmonger hands can be so incredibly strong in this deck that you kind of want to see it as soon as possible. I mean, as soon as possible, right after you manage to create enough copper. And with that being said, I'm not sure if running just like another couple of Outland skirmishes is not going to be better than something like Precision Press or like Hit and Run. But yeah, that's about it. So in conclusion, the meta is incredibly diverse. The meta is incredibly wide. Almost everything, if not everything, is playable. We're yet to see kind of Betsy and Olympia perform, but I feel like everything else we have seen, like Arachne maybe we haven't seen, but I mean we saw Uzuri, so that means that there's at least some spot for Assassin still. And we have seen Dromai as well. Dromai won the AG event, and this is something that a lot of people were not anticipating to be a good deck because of the presence of like all the Brutes and Guardians, but maybe people figured out how to beat them with Dromai, or they maybe dodged them because like the Tech Professor won against like a bunch of Brutes in his way to the top 8. So yeah, see you guys next time.